just flat out ugly from Mizzou. From really start to finish. Well, I won't say completely start to finish because their first play was a 27-yard pass to Luther Burden through the air. And I thought,
we were about to see some things.
Brady Cook is completing a pass of 25 air yards or more. And I'm like, oh, man, maybe things are fixed.
Can I tell you, that play, so down there at Kyle Field, there was a Mizzou section, right? Yeah. There was a section of some pretty proud Missouri Tiger fans there. And we were kind of toward the back of that section. And so there was me and maybe a guy 2 rows in front of me that I don't know. We'd never communicated with one another, but I felt it was our obligation and our civic duty to be the Randy Molman, to be the MIZ to everybody else's ZOU.
Okay.
Right? Because normally at a home game, you've got that coming over the speakers. On the road, so it doesn't need to be very many people, but it's got to be a couple loud people. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to ZOU. I'm going to MIZ. I'm going to help make sure everybody knows that we're doing this. And that is, I think, after that 27-yard catch by Luther Burden is when I lost my voice. And I am just only now getting it back a little bit. So apologies for that. But I had to, Andy. I had to lay it all on the line with the MIZs. Didn't last very long, though.
That was the first. That was the only first down for quite a while in the game.
Oh, my gosh, dude. What a brutal, brutal game. In every way. And look, we'll start by talking about the referees because it was all anybody could talk about as that game got underway. And it's true, like they wiped the 75-yard touchdown off the board. Was there an illegal man downfield? He was straddling that line, right?
Yeah. He was there.
He was beyond the 3 yards, I think. But then but just as like an example, you see last night or Saturday night, Miami has an identical situation, although their guy was 5 yards downfield and it doesn't get called. That's another ACC refs thing. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But it was like, it felt as though the air came out of the team, and I just don't think they knew how to respond. But you have to be able to get up off the mat after a couple of things go against you. And there was 2 or 3 in the beginning that you could nitpick on referee stuff. No defensive pass interference where they threw the flag and then
that was egregious. Yeah, that was pretty egregious right there. Well, how do you throw it and then the guy who is furthest removed from the play say, actually, no, pick that up? Makes no sense to me. And then the only other one is when an A&M receiver quite literally shoves an official during a scuffle. And look,
he pushed a ref.
Even if you make the excuse of, he thought he was actually a Mizzou player, that doesn't make it better, flag. Right? Still flag.
Well, I said the difference would have been a 15-yard penalty versus an ejection. Which, are you pushing a player? Okay, 15 yards. You shove a ref, you're ejected.
Yeah, get out.
And they decided to do neither.
Right.
Because that was an accident. I don't even...
No, stop.
It was ridiculous. And then the other one, too, that I thought was foundational in the way the game went, and I didn't even go back and look at this replay, so it maybe would have just been a very obvious call. But the offsetting penalty after Mizzou was basically off the field on that first A&M drive. It was 3rd and long. You had a holding on A&M, and it's like, incomplete pass, perfect. They do call a DPI, not 5 or 7 minutes of real life after Missouri's gets picked up. That might have been DPI. I'm not arguing the merits of the flag. I'm just saying Missouri was off the field, and that was another spot. Like, you just kind of stacked a few things on top of each other, all of them involving the refs early in that game, and Missouri never responded. But if that's the case, Andy, that is a team not being ready for the moment. That's a team not being ready to play in a huge situation. And one of the big things that sticks out to me, and there are big talking points from this game. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. You call in or text in with yours, 573-875-5847. The quarterback thing for Texas A&M. We talked during the week, Andy, about Eli Drinkwitz's comments. We asked Gabe DeArmond, and he said, I'm the one that asked him about the quarterback situation, whether it would be Marcel Reed or Connor Wegman, and Drink almost acted as though it was a dumb question for Gabe to even ask. Of course, it's going to be Marcel Reed. And we said, all right, we know that that's not really the way you usually treat a situation like that. Maybe he's playing mind games. I'm cool with mind games when it works to your benefit. And then Connor Wegman starts the game, and I'm still confident at that point because I think this is what Drink was goading them into. I think this is what he wanted. But you watch the way that game played out defensively. I don't know if they had a plan for Connor Wegman coming into that game. It was just pathetic by the defense, but that, by extension, is pathetic on the coaching. Because if you're trying to tell us, Eli Drinkwitz, that of course it's Marcel Reed, wink, wink, but then you don't come up with the plan to stop the other guy when they do make the switch, you're still wrong. And you're even more wrong if you legitimately thought, well, they're not going to start Connor Wegman, so we don't have to bother thinking about it. I don't care which one it was, you failed either way. The preparedness was pitiful, and that starts with coaching. Players, I would have liked to have seen them get up off the mat, Andy, but I just, besides myself, with the way that one played out. They start Connor Wegman, and it's like Missouri didn't know what to do.
It was completely lifeless for most of the game from Mizzou. And that does fall on the coaching staff because they're the ones that reset the group, right? And look, the players can do it too, but largely most of the players can't do that. You rely on some of your captains to do it and things like that. But the coaches ultimately have the power to prepare your group to say, all right, get off the mat. We'll make this adjustment. Here we go. Let's try this. Nothing. I mean, Corey Batoon was completely outclassed by Colin Klein as far as play calling in this.
Awful day by Corey Batoon.
Needed to be in man, and they were in zone, and then A&M just takes complete advantage on a run play. Just all kinds of stuff to where I don't even know if they thought that it's like they knew what the script was, but they were a play or two off of it, and just were running the stuff that they were supposed to run 2 plays ago, and then thinking that was going to work again. Like it was completely off the rails from both sides of the ball. I mean, defensively was, I think,
I don't know who played
set
worse.
The tone. I can't really say.
It was both.
Right. You have nothing to say that was good from either side of the ball. So 875-KTGR. We know we got texts rolling in, but keep getting your thoughts in. 875-5847.
We will get to your text. Yeah. We got to rant a little bit. Here's my number one problem. Again, what are the big talking points? What are my takeaways? Missouri Tigers, over the course of the last, I don't know if it goes back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because now the Vanderbilt game looks a little bit different after what happened over the weekend. But Mizzou lost that STP identity. They had that identity of we got something to prove, and they took on an identity of, oh, we've kind of proven something. Why aren't we getting our credit? That starts with Eli Drinkwitz for not finding a way to make sure his team maintains the. You got Luther Burden going on Feinbaum complaining about what channel the Mizzou game's going to be on. And you want more exposure, and then they get their exposure, and they get exposed on ABC on national television.
Yep.
And that's not really a knock on Luther. Like, I don't know what you thought. There's a lot of different people you could point out who didn't play well. Like, Luther had the 75-yard touchdown. They take it away. I thought he played okay. Whatever. Stuff happens. I don't really know why he wasn't on the field very often on third downs.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird to me. But I'm not trying to make it about Luther, but he's one of the faces and voices of the program going out and talking about we need national recognition. Mizzou lost STP, Andy. They had a little bit of, we already proved it. Why don't we get credit? Why aren't people looking at us? And then they barely escape against Vanderbilt, and we thought, okay, that's what they needed. They needed that with a bye to follow. They're going to be able to collect themselves and be ready because they're going to realize that this A&M game is not going to be easy like these other games. It's not going to be the same. But where was the response, Andy? They got lost in the week. They got lost in, Theo Weiss is getting a blanket from Texas A&M's cornerback, and no, I didn't send the blanket, and it's all kind of fun. He's wearing the blanket. All the extra stuff and all the talking and all the tweeting and everything, I love it. We eat it alive during the week. When they're tweeting out Briar Reed, the sister of Marcel Reed, at practice, and it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because everybody thought that, oh, she's not allowed at practice. Wow, Drinkwitz is, but he's having fun with it during the week. All that's great. There has to be substance. The results behind all of that have to matter, or it looks like a clown show. When you're doing all these other things and you're getting swept up in those little things that aren't about the play on the field, it's vibes, baby. It's fun when it's going well. But when that's the look, and then 41-10 happens, and you're doing the hypo, kicking a field goal at the end to make it look less embarrassing, that's 360 degrees, man. That's the total wrong direction from the type of team Missouri football and what they embodied last year. They got lost in it, man. And the season's not over, but they might have blown their chance, man. On Saturday in Texas A&M, they might have blown their chance at all the things and all the goals and dreams that they had for the season because they got swept up in it. And again, they're not the only team with the rat poison this weekend across the SEC and across college football. But something to prove was supposed to be a different mentality. I didn't see it, and I have to say that it starts with Eli Drinkwitz, man. That's where I.
Oh yeah,
they just weren't prepared. They were not prepared for this moment.
Number one person who is the culprit of this is absolutely him. Like, it has to be. Yes, nobody played well, but when nobody plays well, it all comes back to one source, And that's ultimately the head coach. And especially when that is the culture, again, that you're trying to instill, it's something to prove, nobody believes it, things like that. Well, this is why nobody believes in you, because you play in games like this and then you're rattled. Like the crowd, like Brady Cook talking about the crowd noise beforehand and saying, oh, it'll be fine.
It came into play just like you said it could.
Yeah. It seems that it's a little bit different. And they were clearly rattled from it because they had no response for the couple of bad plays that went the other way and had no way to get up off the mat. Because that when you let that happen, a crowd gets even more ammo, and then the dam breaks. So Mizzou had no cure for the dam, essentially, breaking in that one.
And they had such confidence, and they were brash and bold and cocky coming in. And when you back that up, again, that's when we love it, man. That's when we love sports, because it's like, these are the narratives surrounding our team right now. This is what's being said. And our quarterback kind of talked about the noise at practice being louder, and they played that on the stadium, and then another false start. Like, those are things that we said were going to be used against you. I'm not trying to kill Brady for it, because like Gabe DeArmond said, well, we didn't even think in the moment that was going to be anything. But also, you got to have to know that it's going to be something, because it's the SEC. It just was inevitable that it was going to come into play. And if you're able to overcome it, then you look like a boss for doing it, man. But when that's in the background and you're giving that ammunition, this is the way that those things can go sometimes. And they did a lot of talk. There was a lot of fun with social media, and that's Mizzou football tweeting out with their different hype videos, blocking out the noise. It leaned into all of that. That only works if you back it up with your play on the field. And it's not as though Mizzou went down there and played a solid game, but they just came up short. In that case, I'd say, all right, it wasn't the noise, it wasn't the environment. It wasn't their day. Against a good football team, they didn't win. You lose a one-possession game, man, I'd be heartbroken, but those things happen in sports, man. It's competitive out there.
Yeah.
They weren't competitive. This was a case of they absolutely got swept up in thinking that they'd made it and that they were something, and they got humbled in such a significant way. And it was really hard to watch. And now we'll see where they go from there, Andy, and it's kind of freaking frustrating that you have this UMass game, because you win this game by 30 and it still doesn't mean anything. We're not going to find out anything about this Mizzou team right away. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you're tied 10-10 at halftime at UMass too, just because I don't have they'll show us one way or another. The players are going to show us how they're going to respond from this. But my goodness, are the vibes bad right now. It's just so frustrating because it was all on the table in front of them. Most important game of Eli Drinkwitz's tenure, and he didn't have his team ready to play. Flat as a pancake, man.
875-KTGR. Call or text us. Your thoughts on Mizzou getting blown out at Texas A&M. Ben texted in. It's squarely on the coaching staff for not having the team ready to play. We have the talent to win these games. I believe in Drink, but Fudge, let him show he belongs in the SEC, especially on the backside of a bye week. Pitiful is an extremely kind word for what the coaches came to play with. That's the most inexplicable part. 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to figure out what went wrong against Vanderbilt, why you could only win that game in double overtime, and that's what you come with. It looks like they got worse. What was worked on during the bye week? I don't know, but it looks like it got worse, and that is never what you want at this point in the season.
And we're coming at the coaching staff, we're coming at Drinkwitz, but what needs to be understood too by Drinkwitz and by the coaching staff, there's not spite in it from Missouri fans. Like, there's not this. We're not rooting for them to fail, because I know that this narrative gets built up with this coaching staff. Drinkwitz wants to use little things as fuel and motivation. Nobody believes in you out there. That was something they used last year, and it worked because they were focused. And whatever you use as motivation, again, did Brady Cook try to disparage Kyle Field? No, but it worked because the other side was able to use it as motivation, and they went out there and actually did it with substance. But there's not like a narrative forming against Missouri. Oh, nobody believes in you. They didn't play well, and so the results are where we get because of that. Like, that's all it is. They didn't play well, and we have a response to that because we're invested in what this team does. This isn't the fan base rooting against them. They just didn't play well. And so I do appreciate that Drink came out afterwards and said he apologizes to the fans. I hope he sticks with that and doesn't try to then say, fans are mad and it's the fans. We don't get enough. Because a lot of the beginning of the year was we need sellout crowds. We need the fan base support. And they got it, man. That's what's frustrating about this. They have to continue to focus on the right things and stop focusing on the wrong things and about the outside noise. They're supposed to be blocking out the noise. I don't think they blocked out the noise very well this week. I was a believer. I was believing that they were going to find a way to do all the right things and block the noise out. Now they have to say it, and then they have to go and do it before people are going to believe again. Because it seems like this team got focused on a lot of different things. And if that's not a fair characterization, Andy, then how do you explain the performance? It's either they got focused on the wrong things or they just flat out aren't a very good football team. And I just don't think it's the latter. So I'm going to stick to the fact that it's the former. That's something that's fixable, but it has to go be done with substance and the way they move forward. The focus has got to be reignited with this team. And we'll see, man. There's adversity here. There's no doubt about that. When you have an absolute, you just lay an egg where all the expectations were there and the whole country was going, I don't think Missouri at number 9 is real. Let's find out. And now they've got every piece of ammunition they need to come at you.
Yep.
Not talking about from Mizzou fans. I'm talking about that national narrative. But they're one and the same. It really shouldn't matter internally to that program. Go take care of the next week. Be 1-0. All the things that Drink has preached. Why didn't it show up on Saturday? That's where the frustration lies for me.
875-KTGR if you want to call or text us here to talk about the A&M game and the awful things that came from it for Mizzou football. And just trying to get to some of these here, 875-KTGR. One person reminded him of how Kansas State went 2 years ago. And that's, I think, about as bad of a loss. In fact, I'd probably even characterize this one as worse.
I think this one is worse
than Kansas State 2 years ago.
Because of expectations.
Because of expectations and, honestly, the talent of the team. I think they're more talented than they were two years ago. And
the talk coming in.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, everything was set up to be like, oh, this is where Missouri earns its stripes. This is where they show people, hey, we're a top 10 team for a reason. We're in this thing. They could have been competitive, and we could have come on here, Andy, and said, hey, you know what? They lost the game, but that doesn't mean they were fraudulent. This, that, and the other. What they did Saturday, how can I look at this team and not say everything it was built up to be is fraudulent until proven otherwise? I think the talent is there. Everything else has got to match that talent. And it can't just happen at UMass where you win a game on the road against the worst team in FBS. It can't just be Auburn the next week. Like, you've got to carry this and go into Tuscaloosa. And look, Alabama's a better team. I have no idea how this current version of the Missouri secondary is supposed to cover Ryan Williams. I have no freaking clue how that's supposed to happen. But you saw it on Saturday that Alabama's not invincible. They lost to a team you beat. Okay, so this focus, it's got to happen right now for UMass so that it parlays into Auburn and homecoming. And then you go into Tuscaloosa going, this is where the narrative of our season could be. Win or lose, you got to play 1,000% better in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Because, look, everybody else is losing too. So even a tough loss in Alabama, you're like, all right, we can still do something with the season. But for right now, I don't even want to think about playoff stuff. I don't want to think about what you need or how you got to play better. That's step number one. You got to play better and focus on the right things.
Look, we'll talk about it more at 5:05. Are the playoff hopes completely gone now for Mizzou? Which, I mean, if you go to technicalities, technically they are not, but they got to play better. So we
can't even think about the playoff until you.
Until you beat Auburn, right? About. Like at the very least, beat Auburn and
play better.
Yeah,
I mean I don't know, man. The playoff thing is so hard to even wrap my mind around because they play like this. They might 6-6, 7-5. Like, who cares about the playoff for a minute? What's this team going to be over the next couple of weeks? And then how's that Alabama game go? Not whether you win it. How do you show up for that road football game in a tough environment? Yeah. Because if you want to look back at Eli Drinkwitz's tenure, road games, Andy, kind of a thing that they're not very good at. So what's that going to look like the next time? Hopefully there's no tweets about blocking out the noise until they show us a little bit of their ability to do it.
Yeah, I mean, last year was kind of an anomaly in that category when it came to Mizzou going on the road and playing well. So now they have to find that again in a big way.